I'm just going to pop this onto speaker view so it's the person that's talking that appears. So yeah, welcome to this session on green social prescribing. For those of you that weren't here at the beginning, the representative Dave from the National Academy for Social Prescribing couldn't make it, so he's done a little video that we're going to show later. But I'm going to just start by introducing Paul Payne from EcoWorks in Nottingham. And Paul's had some experience of green social prescribing. So do you want to hop straight in and just talk about,
Yeah,
you said you wanted to talk a bit about the historical stuff associated with green
yeah.
social
But I've
prescribing.
I've been working for EcoWorks for the last 25 years. We're a community garden in Nottingham that works primarily with vulnerable adults who've experienced mental distress, people with learning difficulties, and basically anyone who wants to come along. Um, so I've seen quite a lot of changes with regards funding over the years. Um, Initially, we used to get a bit of council money, and obviously with austerity, we get none of that. But there have been various changes with policy, which have sort of come and gone, and quite a few of them have sort of messed around voluntary groups. So we had social economy stuff. And the idea was that voluntary groups working with vulnerable adults would provide some of their own income. And that's really hard because vulnerable adults aren't coming along to be unpaid staff. And the people running those projects are not necessarily very good at the economic side. So that didn't work particularly well. And then there's a whole thing about personalised budgets, and the idea was that people who got care, whether that was a day centre, etc., would get control of their budget and they could buy something. People say, well, they could pay to come to community gardens, they could pay to come to projects, but that's a bit rubbish for people to come and pay and volunteer for you. And then you get this weird dynamic of you've got to manage that income. And then what happens if someone who you know has got a personal budget isn't paying? So that's never worked for us. And then there was a huge amount of meetings that I went to with regarding commissioning. And I think it's really interesting that if we're running a project's something that you try and you experiment with. And if it works, it kind of turns into a service. So if you're working with vulnerable adults and they're improving their mental and physical health and getting lots out of it, then you're more of a service than a project. And it should be something in an ideal world, should be statutorily funded, but obviously it's not. So commissioning was something that could possibly have paid voluntary groups to work with adults, and that failed. And now we've got social prescribing. And social prescribing started in Nottingham probably 10 years ago as an idea, but the idea was that doctors did it. And I think if you go to your doctor and the doctor says, Paul, you drink far too much, you need to stop, you need to cut down your alcohol consumption, you go, yes, doctor, yes, doctor. And then that night you kind of go, oh, I'll just have a glass of wine. And it doesn't really work because there's no one to kind of give you that support. So when social prescribing started, the idea was that the social prescriber would kind of like signpost people and take them to projects. And the doctor would refer people to a social prescriber and they would find the right thing that worked for them, whether that was going on a bike ride, doing something with Canal and Rivers Trust, going for a walk, getting involved with a community garden, going to play croquet, etc., etc. And it's a really good idea because for a lot of people, they don't necessarily need lots of medication. They just need to be part of a community. They need a little bit of exercise. They need healthy food, blah, blah, blah. And that's where social prescribing can really work for those people that are a little bit below the radar, to get them involved in kind of meaningful activities. So it started off in Nottingham, and it's been a really interesting few years because it did clash with COVID. So one thing that I discovered is that all the social prescribers in Nottingham are all part of different GP trusts. You start to realise how privatised the NHS is coming. So you kind of, our social prescribers are PCN6, and we get so much jargon as a community gardener, messing about with courgettes and apples. This whole world of GPs and blah, blah, blah is another world. And so it's really hard to know who you're talking to. And there's a massive turnover in social prescribers. So at the moment, I think the social prescribers are a little bit lazy and they don't really seem to be making a big effort to bring people to any of the community gardens in Nottingham. And yeah, this is quite gutting because if it fails, it's a really going to be a massive waste opportunity. I think one of the reasons for that is that a lot of people, because of the decline in funding for adult social care, that are presenting with way bigger problems than the community garden can solve. So if you're homeless, if you've got serious substance issues, serious mental health stuff, community garden can't deal with that. It's got to be, getting people housed, getting people to sort out addictions, etc., etc. So they can't seem to be concentrating on that rather than the vulnerable adults who are kind of still below the radar, sat at home doing nothing. Um, but alongside that, we've had Green Social Prescribing, and they don't actually refer people in, but they did give us a little bit of money to support the people that at the time did come in. Because that's the other problem with social prescribing. They can bring lots of people to your project, but you don't necessarily have the capacity to deal with them, especially if those people are do need more support. But they are currently trying to get more money, the Green Social Prescribing thing. But they have done a really good job in mapping stuff across the city. So I just wanted to put stuff in context and sort of say where we are in Nottingham, and then I think I'll hand back to Kath and
Just,
take
just,
from
just
there.
a quick question because it seems like so. I've been doing a bit of background research today, and basically, green social prescribing was the kind of it's sort of the brainchild of like Natural England in combination with DEFRA, and they've had this big five
Yeah,
million pound pot of money to run a
mm,
pilot scheme.
yeah,
They've basically contracted seven regions, seven sort of local authorities to um, to roll out this pilot scheme. So Nottinghamshire was one. There's one in Humberside. There's another one in South Yorkshire. There's one in Bristol. One in Surrey. One in Derbyshire. So they've got this money to sort of run this pilot and see how it's working. But the system, as far as I understand it, is supposed to be that you've got the GPs are the point of contact, with your clients. And then there's supposed to be link workers in place who are kind of people who should be kind of co-designing with the clients in terms of what their interests are, what their problems are, coming up with
mm,
some potential solutions, and then signposting them towards local projects and organizations, who can then be the providers of this kind of green social care. But
yeah.
has that actually happened in reality? Have you
Well,
have
there are
you have
there are
you
links.
are there any link workers in Nottingham?
Yeah, but they don't seem very good at linking up, and there has been a massive turnover. So probably 2 years ago, we had an excellent link worker who loved to bring people up to the gardens, and he was coming up all the time and bringing loads of people there, and really wanted to kind of get people there. And he was going the extra mile and talking about basing himself in one of the offices on the allotment site so he could refer people in. And he left, and then there's another link worker who was also very good, who's currently on our board, and she's also left Nottingham, but she's moved further north in the county, and yeah, she's quite saddened by how it's just not working in Nottingham. Whereas the county, she's taking loads of people to the gardens, but she's going the extra mile, and she's kind of taking people there and sort of phoning them up and saying, "Shall we go today?" And if they can't make it, saying, "Well, shall we go next week?" And helping people to get there, because for a lot of people to go and see some weird hippies on a community garden can be quite a big step to actually do it. So and especially if you're working with people with depression and anxiety, because the natural inclination is for them not to go out to things. So that's the idea of the link worker, to kind of um, not befriend, but to form a relationship with people, to
Mm.
really find something they want to do. And if they say, "Oh, I didn't enjoy that community garden," then find something else for them to do. And it is really sad because all these things, it's quite expensive to do. But in the long run, if you keep people out of hospitals, either for physical health, like diabetes, blah, 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 or mental health, then you're actually going to save a lot of money in the long run. So, yeah, so I really don't want it to fail. And we are kind of in the process of trying to actually find out what's going off in Nottingham.
So I guess one last question before, because I know you have to disappear off in just over 5 minutes, but Did you make contact with the link workers and tell them about your project, or did they find you and approach you?
Initially, the link workers spent a lot of time just going to visit all the projects. And that was great, although you seem to get more link workers coming to have a look around that then would leave. And I don't know why there was such a high turnover in link workers, but it seemed like you'd meet someone and then they were gone again. But you are only as good as your link worker, and I don't know what they're referring people into, and they're not very good at communicating. So they've all got our emails. We're all part of various Nottingham growers group networks. All the community gardens talk to each other, but we don't get a email from PCN6 saying this is what we're doing in terms of social prescribing or blah blah blah. So it does seem that, yeah, they've sort of just disappeared off the radar. And yeah, I think the people who are at the top aren't necessarily of the actual social prescribing teams, probably aren't actually that aware of what's going off at a lower level. So we're sort of trying to tease that out at the moment, collectively, as some of the other community gardens.
Mm. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. So I want to bring Wendell in and Phil in now, because I know you're living in areas that don't have sort of funded green social prescribing pilots, but I think you've both got really extensive experience of working with clients who've been referred and working with people with mental health problems. So would you be willing to talk just a little bit about how you've accessed those volunteers and the processes that you've had to go through to be able to find those people and encourage them to come to your project?
Who's going to go first, Phil?
You go, Wendelin, you're already talking.
Hi. So what I would hi everybody, good to see you. Yeah, we facilitate, as I said earlier, a little garden called Harmony Garden, and we're actually trying to spread that out to work with other groups as well. And what I would like to say really is, from my perspective, it's been quite early days, the whole social prescribing thing, but I definitely agree with Neki that there's not enough motivation to get the people who are responsible for signposting people. There's just some kind of energy that isn't there, and I'd be really interested myself to find out what that is. So we've had a few people come through social prescribing, not many really. There've been basically women who we seem to have our demographic is mainly women who are either widowed or single, sort of ranging from 45 maybe to sort of just over 70. But we've had them come who there's one in particular that really sort of sticks out for me. She lost a husband, and she started to suffer depression as a result of it, and then she was signposted to the garden. And I have to say, yeah, she absolutely loves it. She loves coming and having the connection. A lot of what we do is obviously very open about talking about mental health, and she shares lots about her culture and that. So it's been really rewarding from that perspective, and she's really keen to also push and promote what we're doing herself. So we really absolutely value that. And then other people, I would say, have probably come. I mean, we've tried to, as an organisation, Wild Edges has really sort of tried to push the social prescribing by contacting surgeries and saying, hey, we have a little project within the vicinity of you, where you are, perhaps you'd like to signpost your patients to us and that. And it's really interesting how they don't seem to be on it. So when we have events, we invite GPs and people who are actually responsible for signposting people through green or social prescribing. And I just don't know what it is, but most people we've actually got either through our housing association, and some of it's even just been having a sign outside the garden, and they've seen that what is this place, what's going on there. And then that's sort of been word of mouth that we've had that as well. Yeah, by sort of friends, somebody would tell somebody about something else. So that's been really where our successes lie in that. And I would like it, there to be more through social prescribing. So they're not a great story to tell you about it in that context, but I would like to understand why there isn't more of it. And it's, yeah, so maybe that's for me to do the research in this area, I suppose, as to why that's not happening.
Thanks, Wendelin. Yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm sort of interested because be interesting to know what the difference is between the areas that have kind of been heavily funded that are running this as a pilot, and actually how much this is rolling out into other places, or whether it's just a case of holding our breath and pausing until they actually justify the fact that it's working for people, and then perhaps there'll be more resourcing that's coming in. But yeah, that's really frustrating if you're there and ready and willing to work with people and it's hard to actually find them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a site that we're signed up to in our local area, and people can signpost themselves. It's gosh, I can't remember the name of it now. I've been working too hard today. And basically either the housing association or individuals can go on there, and then we get like an email alert that somebody's interested in coming to the garden. So that's really good. Some people really want to come, but they can't because accessibility. We have people who have been inside for such a long time, and they haven't stepped outside of the pavement. The social anxiety, and then adding to that physically they can't get out. So it's working with them to find a way of how we can go and pick them up and bring them in. And then obviously we've got to look at our energies, and that's always the case. If you're trying to get these projects off the ground, you really do have to take care of your own energies as well. So we're constantly just building on what these problems are and how we can actually overcome them. And I definitely don't try to push having more people, because I know it doesn't work. I don't sort of beat myself up about I want more people coming to the project. It's very much an organic process, and that has worked much better. And if events are really crucial to that, and to promoting that, and helping to get that green, marketing it to the green social prescribing side of it. I think actually that's me.
Thanks, Wendelin. Phil, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about your experience in Oxford?
So it was interesting what you said, Wendelin, at the end there about it being a bit of an organic process, because that's kind of been our experience. We haven't sort of come in with a sort of funded project with lots of resource. It's been very incremental, and probably over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, it's gradually built up with referrals from all sorts of different organisations coming, bringing people to the City Farm with support workers sometimes, or people coming and just being made aware of when we're open to volunteering sessions. We've been running a kind of well-being session on a Wednesday with limited numbers, so that it's more, because we have volunteering sessions where we can sometimes have like 100 people turn up on the site, and it's quite chaotic, and that wouldn't necessarily support somebody who's in a state of high anxiety or needs needing that sort of more sort of comfortable space. So we have Wednesday volunteering sessions, which are limited and rotated to sort of 8 to 10 people, and that's usually what we recommend people come to if they've been approached if they've come from a referral person. And I'll just sort of talk through some of the different organisations that we've worked with, and this really helps with the recruitment side of it, which Wendelin touched on, which is if we go out and try and find people to come, it's going to be a massive investment in our time, and initially as a very, very, very small volunteer run group, and now we've got a small part-time staff team. That it's not it for me, it doesn't really make sense for us to be doing that legwork to find the people. So partnering with GP surgeries or other support services that are already working with that target group is a much more sort of permacultural way of delivering that people care element to our project. And we've had some really good stories. So people that we've worked with, like I've said, we've had people come from CAMS, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Support. We've had people coming from Restore, which is a support service for adults with mental health, sort of recovering from mental health issues. We've had people coming through refugee support agencies. We've had people coming from the GP surgery, and then also from agencies that work with people that have been unemployed for a long time for various different reasons. And that's been one of our best ones. For one of our best stories is that one guy who's came from one of his sort of support agency partners about 4 years ago, we've now got as a part-time staff member. So he sort of progressed from being a referral through that organisation to actually working with us. And we've been working with a Thrive is a really interesting organisation based in Reading that have a sort of three-pronged methodology, pedagogy, I suppose, around support, which is the social and therapeutic horticulture model. So the basic premise of it is time working in nature, time working with other people, and time doing a meaningful task. So that's kind of where we're based. So like the essence of what we're providing is sort of very low on the green care scale. It's not like mental health service providers. We're not a mental health service provider. We provide a sort of social and therapeutic horticulture context. And if you're stepping into this realm, it's worth recognizing where you're at and what you're trying to deliver, because one of the challenges to doing this work, in my experience, is that there's a lot of people who want to send people to our service, to our work, to our offer, and sometimes their need is greater than we can deliver. And it's quite important to not set ourselves up or that are coming up to fail. And that's sort of one of my bugbears about this sort of social prescribing buzz, is that lots of people are saying it's a great thing, but it's not coming with any resource. So it's really good to hear that the Green Social Prescribing is actually coming with some resource. So I really do hope it does pick up and work well. I just want to say a little bit about, so we, as this has evolved with us, we've kind of developed a bit of a referral process. So if volunteers want to come to volunteer with us, we have a sort of sign up form, and on that we ask, is there anything that we need to know about in terms of criminal record, mental health supports needs, any other additional needs that you've got which we need to know about. And then if people sort of fill that in, then we signpost them towards a meeting with us, so we can actually sort of have a conversation about what that means. And then sometimes we do have to say no. Sometimes we have to say, we don't actually have the skills and capacity to support you to come on your own. So the signpost then is, you need to come with a support worker. So that can be tricky sometimes, but that really helps, sort of particularly with the Wednesday sessions, and we have a limited number of people that have come with as a referred person rather than just turning up, which is challenging because our open sessions, our volunteering sessions on Fridays and Saturdays, in theory anybody can just walk through the gate and come and help. So Chris is asking a
Yeah, you said, sorry, Phil, you said if I can come in with a question, if that's okay, in the process, about a difference of people coming with or without, or organizations coming with or without resources that are kind of forwarding people, if you like, makes a difference. So what do you mean by resources, was my question. Is it just money backing, or? Where's he gone?
Oh, are you still there, Phil? Have you scared him off with your
I've
question?
I've scared him off with the question.
To mute. So all referrals that we've had in the past have come without any kind of financial support for our time to manage them or to give them any sort of service, which is fine if it's so that we have done some fundraising bids, which mean that we've got staff time allocated to deliver those sessions. And yeah, so that does help. But I've heard it in other projects where the number of people that are coming with increasing levels of need has actually swamped the project and meant that they've basically been, particularly volunteer-run community garden projects, getting loads of referrals from a GP surgery can really stress and burn out volunteers and staff as well. Samuel, you've got a hand up. You're muted.
Yes, sorry. I was just going to echo that experience, because lots of the people who come to our projects often don't come with money attached. There are some projects that do have a budget, and often you have to keep asking about that, because sometimes they're not always forthcoming about how to access that. It took us over, I think, over a year and a half to actually get access to some of the budget from people. They said there was a budget, but then they didn't tell us how to get that money. So that's kind of what we experienced as well.
Samuel, it's really lovely to see you here. I'm aware that you're kind of, this is your kind of field of expertise. Would you like to talk a little bit about Solhaven and how you managed to recruit some of your volunteers for your project?
And if Phil's finished.
Well, I've got more questions for Phil.
Okay, yeah. So what we did, we started a project we've been running for several years now. I mean, initially we was getting volunteers through different methods. So we've got volunteers via WOOF, worldwide opportunities on organic farms, where people exchange room and board for work, because we had accommodation at that time. We've also worked with local organisations like the Volunteer Bureau, where you can list your volunteer opportunities at. What we did at the start of this, our project, so we are now into the second year of, the first year of 3 years project funded by the National Lottery. So last year we did a project which was our development project, which was funded by the National Lottery, which we were building on the last sort of 4 years of work. And we submitted our bid, but we had to gain expressions of interest. So we went to the local GPs, the local charities, so Mind, basically everybody we could think. So one of the things that I first did was I developed a theory of change, which showed what the benefits of working with us was. So we actually have a 12-week program. And the idea is that people come to work with us for 12 weeks. And during those 12 weeks, we introduce them. 1 week is in the garden, and 1 week is in our yurts, where we introduce them to tools and techniques to help them with mental health and mindfulness. So that's how we found people to engage. It's a lot easier to engage somebody than say, come and volunteer, because what does that mean? Often people who are dealing with anxiety, they want something bite-sized that they can deal with. So this enabled us to be able to offer something to introduce people to the idea of Solhaven. And then after those 12 weeks, we then look to how we can support people better. That idea has developed as we've gone along. So we sent out this theory of change to the people, which, a little brochure that said, benefits of nature therapy are. I can share that with people if they wish. And then from that, I spoke in social prescribing groups. I did lots of meetings where basically I did presentations about what we did and then getting people to the file. And still, you do have a time where observation is that a lot of people are overworked in the social prescribing world. They have massive amounts of people that they have to look after, and they often, when we're talking to them, they can't cope. So that's how we've engaged. We've engaged not just them, the service users, but we also provided well-being workshops for the social prescribers themselves, which they have actually paid for that.
Mm.
So the participants have come here and gone, oh, this is really helping us, and they've given back lots of feedback, and they've come back to us and gone, oh, we'd like to experience this too. So then we've done wellbeing workshops for the day, where we've charged them, and we've done several of those, and that's been a very good income for us.
You've on the back of that, you've done some paid workshops for the workers, so almost
Yes.
like the worker or the people that are actually doing the prescribing rather than the people that they're prescribing to.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's really great.
So we've done, and they tend to have, because they tend to have a staff training budget. Off the back of COVID, there was a lot of workers who hadn't been together for years, so we kind of suggested maybe we could do something to help them. And we've had people who've, there was one guy, he hadn't been outside his house for 5 years. He now comes here 3 days a week and works with us. We've got some beautiful stories that I can share. But it's really about engaging people. We did the Plough in the Mind, and then we did a artists in residence program. An artist in residence was local artists working at Solhaven, doing craft and activities based in nature. So they was getting things from the garden or taking photographs in the garden. So again, it's a very much that was a 10-week program. So very much focused around, we do programs, and then we funnel them into working as a volunteer if that's appropriate, or we support them through to another opportunity. We're now looking at how do we develop a follow-on program to further support people.
That's really interesting. I'm going to thank you, Samuel. That's brilliant, and I'm going to throw this back into the panel, and there's an invitation here because I know there's a lot of experience in the group, so if anybody else feels like they have something that they'd like to offer, please feel free to speak to these questions. But it's like, how do you design your kind of program for social prescribing? It's like, do people just come to drop-in sessions, or do you have structured days? Do you have special standalone days for people that you think might be more vulnerable, that need more attention? Do you do time-limited programs? I mean, what's been the pattern that you've identified that you think works best in terms of working with people that may be more vulnerable?
So some of the people that we have that come and answer yes when we ask those sort of trickier questions at the start are sometimes come for like sort of 4 or 5 sessions, or we do sort of a period of time partly to see if it works for them, partly to see if it works for us. So that can be helpful. And then one other thing I wanted to sort of add, which I was meaning to say earlier on, but Samuel's comment about like capturing the stories, because that is really like, it's so important to capture those stories. And I feel like in my presentation quite a lot of it was a bit like, be wary of it, it's kind of a drain, but actually it also, some of the stories are absolutely wonderful and magnificent. So really concentrating on capturing those in a useful way to illustrate the power of this work in a permaculture perspective for the people care is really powerful. And then also from a more sort of mercenary perspective, from being able to say this is how it works to funders, this is what we've done, and making sure that we capture stories and case studies from the participants and get their consent to share those stories, or not. But if making sure that if you're starting into this work, to think about like getting some idea of what's going on in their life right at the beginning, and then what's changed over time, will really help to validate the work. It's happened by them being there and having good experiences potentially, but if we can capture those stories, then that's really powerful.
Could you talk about specifically how you've done that? Because I just think it's, we're, at the Permaculture Association, we're looking at putting in a big bid for the National Lottery. And so, we're always looking at what's the impact of our work. And I think those kind of narrative, personal stories are very much what funders are looking for in terms of supporting your project. So how do you do that at Oxford City Farm?
Well, writing quotes down, actually occasionally writing some case studies, and also I feel like it's becoming clearer that that's also needed. So we probably haven't been doing it as much as I think it would benefit us to be doing. Gwendolyn and Samuel both want to speak.
So can I invite you in first, Gwendolyn, and then you next, Samuel?
To be fair, Samuel, his hand up first. I just want to say, talking about capturing stories. So I've I've seen people grow and evolve in such an amazing way with the things we're doing in the garden, and it is absolutely, it just really, really tugs at my heart, and I really want to capture those stories. So I've invited members of the garden, that come to it, if they would allow me to video them. So I sit and have a chat. And I actually did the first one today. So that's something we're starting to do, is to record people's stories, like, if permaculture's helped them, what's been their experience, and keep them short, because some people are, a bit nervous about doing it. But I think it's a really good way to capture stories. Are things that you can share with funders if needs be. You can send links onto YouTube and that, and it's real life stuff, as long as those people are happy to do it. But it's great, and it's fun actually as well. It's a really easy way to do it. A couple of minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's no problem. But yeah, it's just wanted to sort of share that with everybody.
Thanks, Gwendolyn. Samuel?
Well, we've from a very get-go from this project, we have done a very structured way of getting people's input. I mean, that's one of the things the National Lottery asked us to begin with, was how do you know people make an impact? This year we're developing that further. So we've looked at different tools. So we actually had a sheet of, well, how do you feel about certain things, and rate yourself from 1 to 10. And then we've moved to a process called DAO. What's it called? The Recovery Star, which is like you do a star. It's a star, and it has 1 to 10, and you look at different aspects. So, for example, it might be how is your addictive behaviour, and you rate yourself on how you're developing it. And we talk with people through this. So we do that 3 times during the 12 weeks. So we do it at the start, we do it in the middle, and we do it at the end. So then we can see people's progression, and you can see we've just finished a program, and you've got people who've gone from a 2 up to an 8. And the star's gone from, like, sorry, I can't show you right now. I mean, I've got a report from last year which has got some of these things in. So you go from like this to this. So that really shows, and what we're working on is now, how do we improve on that? How do we put systems in place? So we've now hired an occupational therapist, and she's now working to improve those processes. We do one-to-one groups with people. I don't know if you can see this. Oh, it doesn't work, does it?
It's because you've got your blurry background. That's
okay. So there we go. So this is our farm. So this was done in a group session. and this is how people feel, how the farm makes people feel. There's a whole key that goes with this. There's stories. This was done with the artists. So, there's the stories of, the orange and red is we're feeling safe, we're feeling comfortable. And that, one artist literally did a map of the farm, which is like, it's table size, dining room table size. And everybody started drawing on that, and they decided the colour scheme. And it's really interesting because all the colours fit with the colours of the chakras. But they didn't know that. That's what they chose. And then we've used that again as the narrative within the artist group, talking about how they feel about different things, how they feel about the place. And then and then we've got an exhibition that's happening next year where we're going to be showing the artwork that they've created here. And that's going to be that has their poems, their videos, their photographs that they've created from being here and how it has affected them. So there's lots of ways that you can engage people and get people's stories as part of a community project. And in that, we really find that when people might be shy, but when you engage with them, oh, we're doing it for this reason. They're like, oh yeah. And we're doing one this year where we're using an app where we can actually attach pictures and stories and poetry to trees virtually, but you can go on the app, you click the app, you can look at the tree and you can see those drawings. So there's lots of different things that we're doing.
Wonderful. I'd just like to bring everybody in, just to wake everybody up, if anybody's kind of just enjoying having their tea and having their camera off, just to share in the chat. I'd just like us to do a bit of a brain dump in the chat as to all the different potential client groups. I know Wendelin just likes to call people that come to her project gardeners to take the pressure off, but who are all the potential clients, volunteers, gardeners, people that you feel that you might be able to work with through Green Social Prescribing? Let's do a bit of a brain dump in the chat and see how many different groups we can identify that we might want to work with.
I was wondering if anyone's working with hospices.
I didn't hear that. Sorry. Say that again.
I was wondering if anyone's working with hospices, with palliative patients and families.
We work with people who are living at a halfway house, who are recovering addicts, and we've worked also with some other family members. We work
with people from a residential care home that's right next door with people with dementia, and run activities, and they do come with support sort of activity leaders from the care home. That's really special.
So could I ask you, there's some really good stuff appearing here. So could I ask you to keep on just anyone that you can think of, any user groups, any vulnerable people, any groups that you could identify in the area that you live that you think might be appropriate for Green Social Prescribing? So just to make this video more interesting as you're writing in, I'll read some of these out. So we've got some great ideas here. So parents of children with additional needs, prisoners, adults with mental health issues, families with children with ADHD and other concerns. We've got local residential home for adults with additional needs, young people struggling with mental health, local charities, hospitals, community groups, young carers, people who have mild to severe-ish mental health concerns, young people and children with additional needs to help access education, pause clients. Could you explain what that is, Phil?
Yeah. Am I muted, or can you hear me? Sorry.
You're on. You're on.
Pause is a charity that supports women who've had multiple children taken into care. So we've worked with them a bit, providing. So basically, the idea is that they take a pause from getting pregnant and then spend the time learning sort of how to cook, how to look after the house, look after people. So yeah, it's a charity that I think is amazing, and we've supported them a bit at the City Farm. They haven't come independently, but they've come and done sort of sessions in our kitchen classroom.
Gosh, there's some great stuff here. Homeschooling groups, recovery houses, new arrivals to Britain, housing associations, NHS doctors and nurses, Mind, homeless centre, job centre, people who have physical disabilities such as ME or other physical degenerative problems, and Mind. Great. So that's I mean, that's such a broad range of people, and I guess there's such a range of needs, different needs, when working with all those different kinds of people. So I guess my next question is, what kind of things do you have in place? Which of those people do you feel that you have the capacity to work with? Who do you feel that you don't have the capacity to work with? And what have you put in place to be able to support those people? So feel free, anybody, to jump in. Samuel, do you want to speak?
Yeah, so we have an assessment process that people go through. So for example, we work with the local psychiatric hospital where we have referrals coming from, but we initially had some people that were referred that were just we couldn't cope with because they were just I'm not sure the right phrase. They were beyond our capability to support. So anybody who needs one-to-one work isn't suitable for our project, for example. What we're doing now is looking at using the same assessments that they do. So there's a scale of how they assess people. So we're looking at using that as terms of reference. But that's the same when you have people being referred, because often with social prescribing, people are referred and they don't disclose everything. So you put things down. Have they got a problem with drugs, alcohol, or did they have medication? And then you get back a form that's just got the name and address, and that's it. And maybe a brief statement, and then somebody comes along and realise, well, actually, this person's actually almost psychotic, and they need to be referred to a psychiatric hospital. That was a recent episode. So it's really knowing what you can deal with and having a process to deal with that. That's what we found really helpful, because sometimes people aren't right for you and you need to be able to say no.
Thank you, Samuel. Wendelin, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, I just wanted to say so that because ours works on a more organic process, which after listening to some of the people here, I'm thinking I maybe just want to sort of push that a bit more. People will hear about the garden, they hear about the project, and they'll come along, and what we do is we invite them just to get a feel for the people that are there, the things that we actually do. And then if they come back, they then it kind of gets a little bit bureaucratic, I suppose, and that's really to kind of cover our own backs as a project. They have a form they complete, and we call it like a harmony gardener, because it's a harmony gardener, they're called harmony gardeners. It's like an etiquette form, if you like, and basically it's just about a list of all the things that is expected of people. We try and keep it as basic as possible, but then they complete a form. And on that form, I say to them that how beneficial it is to them as well as us, and that covers all things really, and that includes any mental health concerns they may have. and whether they're interested in doing like a one-to-one support thing, which we have actually, or I've actually done before. So I trained with mine to do like mental health peer support. And I have actually done that. And I would say if anybody does, and I know we've already been discussing this here, the very first time it happened, it was okay for a little while, but then I managed to get it came out they actually needed much more support than I could or anybody could give them in the group. But then they were signposted to, I worked with Mind, and then they got an opportunity to actually have some extra support there. So then they were going to attend the garden to have that like as an add-on. Unfortunately, we had to ask them to leave. So there's like a period of adjustment and actually sign up to join the garden and become a member. And then basically we see how they work with everybody. And if people just, if it doesn't work, I have actually had to ban somebody from the garden, and that was horrible. And the trouble is they didn't stick to being banned. It's at the stage now if they come back to the garden, the police have to get involved. So I'm sure lots of you have probably had experience already, but that was horrible because I really wanted to help this person. So yeah, that's just sort of something to say, that they had the period of assessment, it didn't work. And I spoke to people at Mind, who did this sort of supervision, and they said, it's not unusual, but for it to happen, which made me feel better. But yeah, I was quite sad about that, really. Yeah.
Thanks, Wendelin. That sounds really difficult. Phil, did you want to add some stuff in about your experiences of the stuff you've put in place at Oxford City Farm?
Yeah, so sort of following on from what Wendelin was saying, very much it's really good to have a bit of a sort of first contact, find a bit out through some sort of form application process, and then a meeting, sort of one-to-one, where people can come and meet us, see the space where there's not other people around, so it's just sort of very much sort of one-to-one. And then what we've introduced more recently, and we haven't really used yet, well, quite a while ago we wrote a sort of values, City Farm values, so which outlines how we expect people to behave at the farm. And the part of the reason for that is so that if something comes up, we can just point at that and ask them to go and read it, or go with them and read it to them and say, this is how we expect people to behave at the farm. So then it can't become a conflict between the staff member or the volunteer lead and the person that's acting up in whatever way it is. And then more recently, we've actually introduced a yellow card and red card, sort of like football almost, which I haven't actually used yet. But part of the reason why we've had to do it is because we have had some incidents where people are coming with support work. Like one particular guy coming with a support worker and starting to be quite abusive, and still want to support him because we recognise that the abusiveness is part of his mental health state and his condition. And when things aren't going to plan, that's how it manifests. And we need to make sure that we're protecting our staff and volunteers and other people that are in the space. So yeah, we've sort of put that in place. Haven't actually used it yet, but it's clearly visible in the sort of main space. So if anyone looked on the wall, they'd be able to see yellow card means have a look at the vision, have a look at the mission, have a look at the expectations of how to be at the farm, and then red card means, what's going on is upsetting people. It's time to leave, please. And then I think the next stage would then be probably where Wendelin's at, which is, where we've got someone that's been asked to leave multiple times and nothing's changing. Then we need to sort of look at, what happens next. And I think for me, the really important thing is that it's taken out being a personal conflict between the staff member and the person. So that's why having the expectations of the site and what we expect people to behave like at the farm is really important. That's enough for me.
Samuel.
Right. Yeah. Oh, just realised I didn't have my mic muted. Sorry about that. Yeah. Somebody asked about how you support people from these things, so with these hard stories. So we structure our sessions. So, for example, they end just before lunch, and at lunchtime is for our staff. So we eat together, and that's the time where we can talk and we maybe can have a debrief. So giving time and space to be able to support your staff is really important. We also have that time at the end of the day, and we always structure time in our sessions as well. So people have a check-in to say how they are. You have the session, and then there's the time to have the checkout. So there's the time for the people who come into the project, and there's time for the staff as well to have that support. And afterwards we'll write up notes about what's happened, so we've got a record. And we do that for all our groups we have. We are always observing what's going on, and then we can refer that, and maybe, if necessary, have a session together where we will support each other. We've all been trained as mental health first aiders to be able to support each other and the people who come into the project. And it's really important to put things in place. Our project design is such that we have spaces where people can go to chill out, to go and take themselves away from the group. So you've got the main activity space, and then somewhere else that's been designed so they can go there and they go, oh, this is nice. So that's part of our design of our site. We've actually considered these places. So hopefully that helps as well.
Wonderful, thanks. Yeah, just to pick up on that. So Hazel put a really great question in the chat. So would you like to ask the question and sort of see if anybody else has any more feedback on that, Hazel? And do feel free, anybody, if you've got some questions, please pop them in the chat, or feel free to just jump in and ask anything that you're interested in at this stage. The floor is yours. Sorry, Hazel, go for it.
It's interesting that Samuel just said they're all trained as mental health first aiders, because my counsellor hat is sitting there saying, hang on, where's the fallback? Where's the support for everybody? Because some of this is really tough stuff, even if you're not taking on the severe cases of mental health, ill health. It is tough. And also it can go haywire. You can have problems with it. And I was just wondering what support there is in place. There's part of my cynical thoughts saying, this is really, GPs can be offloading here stuff, and they're not having to pay for it. It's a free service. So what's going on there? How can we get around that? So yeah, it's that thought, keeping everyone safe. Yeah.
Phil, would you like to hop in?
Yeah, I was really moved by Samuel's thing about having the meal session for the debrief, the staff debrief, and I'm just like, why aren't we doing that? Because as Hazel says, like the potential for vicarious trauma, hearing other people's stories and the impact that can have on people is potentially massive. And then also the other thing that popped into my head whilst we were talking just then is making sure organisationally that you have a safeguarding policy in place and a process in place, so that you know who to refer to when it is beyond your control, and not beyond your control, but beyond your skill set, and when there's stuff that you need to get support from elsewhere. I think that's really important.
So are you linked in with lots of other local support agencies? So might you signpost someone towards more of a crisis team, or if needs be?
Well, like the local hub, MASH, multi-agency support services, which is, you know, it's for people that are, you know, threatening to hurt someone or threatening to hurt themselves, clearly not able to look after themselves. You know, there's sometimes phoning the police and it's about raising a safeguarding concern rather than, you know, I had one guy sort of stumbled in and was clearly off his face on something, and we couldn't really support him, but I couldn't really just sort of kick him out. So I did end up phoning the police and saying, you know, safeguarding concern, there's this man walking down the street, he's not well, needs some support. Or if, you know, if there's a story that comes up within a group, you know, sometimes we need to refer that to another agency like the schools that we have coming, and sometimes we need to raise a safeguarding concern. So just having that sort of thing in place organisationally makes you can know that it's not you having to hold it all individually, and that's really important for supporting personal well-being when we engage with people with need, and that amount of need is increasing. And that my experience is that schools are increasingly experiencing young people with more anxiety, mental health problems. It's numerically, the numbers are getting bigger, and like Hazel's sort of concern around the sort of cynicism around GPs giving us lots of work and offloading it. That is what's happening, and they can't deal with it either. So, you know, this is going to happen. So, like, I think it's really important that we can step up to an extent, but recognise our limits.
Mm-hmm. Wendelin, can I invite you in?
I was just gonna, sorry, my internet's playing up. I was just gonna completely agree with Hazel. When this particular incident was happening, it was very, very difficult, and unfortunately, it got quite personal, which made it even harder. And that's why I did take it to the extreme of just, you know, having to absolutely ban the individual. But yeah, I do think that people are being offloaded because of the pressures on the mental health service and strain on GPs. It's too easy to do. I'm very, very keen to find out how we can bridge that gap, which is what I wanted to do. This is why I knew this individual. I got a sense of where they were, the trauma that they were experiencing from the conversations, especially that they were telling me. And I want to use that as a baseline for something going forward. So rather than it's like, I'm never going to help those people again, it's actually, how do we use that to help find the solutions where possible, but obviously safeguarding ourselves within that. So yeah, I would say it's absolutely imperative and really important that there is some kind of a backup. And to be honest with you, I have no idea from where I am who that might be. The connection was having with Mind, all of that stopped due to their funding stop. So any supervision that was there. So I guess I've been a bit reluctant to kind of promote too much what we're doing in the garden with that again, which is why I want to train to be a counsellor, because I think at least if I can do that training, then I've got that experience, which I then will feel more ready to be able to cope with that. So different levels kind of happening, but it's absolutely so crucial that that support is there in whatever shape or form that might be.
Thank you, Wendelin. I'd really like to invite you back in, Hazel. You know, as a counsellor, it's like, do you have any thoughts or recommendations that you think could be supportive to projects in the network in terms of, you know, having that resilience and support?
I think what I'll echo, you know, what Samuel was saying is brilliant, that they're doing groups. So they're effectively doing group supervision between them, which is fantastic. But with Wendelin saying, if you train as a counsellor, you will have professional supervision to hand. And yeah, most of your projects, you haven't got the funding to pay for a professional supervisor who will help you in the sticky situations that you might come into where things get out of hand. I suppose because of my years of being a counsellor, I'm sort of like the little red lights are going on for me, thinking, you know, it can go so far.
Mm.
The GPs are overwhelmed. And Phil was saying, you're going to get more and more severe mental health coming your way if you're not careful. And it's you know, counsellors have to work to a code of ethics. You know, there are sort of strict rules on what you can do and what you can't do, what you can divulge, what you can't divulge. But I think it's fantastic work what everyone's doing with their projects. I think it's amazing. I'd love to be able to do it. But yeah, you all need to make sure you look after yourselves, keep yourselves safe. Yeah.
I mean, I had a really difficult experience of that.
And again, it's
just to do a very quick sharing. I can you hear me okay? I'm not sure whether my internet's very good. Yeah, great, thank you. I worked for a year around a cooking project for asylum seekers and refugees in Halifax, and you know, it was cook and eat and supporting people with their language skills and building like a friendship circle. But after every session, you know, people would stay behind and they'd tell me their stories, you know, when people have come from the Congo or the war in Afghanistan, or, you know, some of these stories were incredibly harrowing and there was no supervision. And I think after a year I had to leave because I was sort of starting to feel very, very panicky. And I had, you know, I was absorbing all of these stories from people and I had nowhere to take them. So I think it's, you know, I think it's really important that, you know, the recognition that while we want to do good and support the most vulnerable of people, that we have to have the resources to be able to take that somewhere and do something with it. Otherwise, it spills over into our personal lives, and it can be, you know, particularly for those of us that are really sensitive, it can be incredibly hard to process. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Hazel. That's I think that's a really vital part of this jigsaw. We've got 10 minutes left, so would anybody else like to ask a question? I reckon we've probably got time for about 2 questions.
I just wanted to name what you just talked about, Kath. It's vicarious trauma, and it is as it can be as impactful on people as the trauma that itself. So what you've experienced and are holding potentially is vicarious trauma. So it's worth getting some work and support. And yeah, I want to know how maybe the Permaculture Association can support us as we, you know, is there something that we can do to set up that network that Hazel's flagging up the need for, which I've experienced the need for, and you've experienced the need for?
I mean, one thing that jumps to mind is, I mean, we talked about it when Wendelin did her session on permaculture and mental health in January, about setting up a space on the community hub that's specifically about permaculture and mental health and well-being, you know, and then maybe we can kind of peer organize there being support circles or, you know, peer supervision, or, you know, we just talk about some of this stuff and come up with some kind of co-design and collective solutions. But there would need to be a commitment from people to be able to manage those spaces as well. But I'd be very willing to set that up as one option. Wendelin.
Can I just say, I do a MOG every other month. So where Gemma does the educators MOG, and it is only out to educators and diploma apprentices. So I do one on a Wednesday, like every second month, I think it is. And basically that's discussing issues in and around permaculture, mental health, and how us as educators and, you know, pioneers, whatever, have to work with mental health in some kind of way. So this would actually be a really good discussion for the next one, if anybody's interested in doing that. And I'm really working on an initiative at the moment for the very things we're actually discussing here. How do we create this peer support network where we can actually support each other? and all of the gush of stuff that's coming in from the mental health service. I mean, they're overstretched, you know, completely. Funding's been reduced. GPs are overworked. So they're looking for, you know, there's this need for this to happen. So how do we build this thing, whatever it might be, where we can support each other and get that peer supervision, if you like? Yes, I know it's really important for people to have, like, you know, the supervision through like professionals like counselling that. But I think there's a lot of us here who have a lot of experience, know what those needs are. And I do believe a lot of those energies can be dispersed. So like Kath, what you were saying, where you've just, you know, had all this energy and stuff built up inside you, maybe if you'd have had an opportunity to be part of a network where people could have shared. So in our group that we have, there's a core group of people who sort of facilitate the garden. And when I was speaking earlier about this person that was banned from the garden, it wasn't my decision. It was a group decision. We spoke about it. We said how it would affect other vulnerable people that worked really, really hard to get to where they have done. So it was really important to have that collective decision making. And it seems to be working, you know, at the moment. But I would be really interested, you know, to discuss people, you know, how we can look at potentially doing that and working towards that.
Amazing. I mean, I'd really love to support you in that, if that's, you know, if you'd be willing to take the lead on it, Wendelin. But, you know, I can certainly create the space online for that to happen. So yeah, maybe have a think about what that might look like and reach out. Chris, did you want to add something in?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say how immensely grateful I am for those of us that are, or those of you that are specialising in this sort of side of people care. It's you know, I work with marginalised communities in Nepal, but actually there are more marginalised communities back here in the UK than out there. It's a very different thing. So to Phil and Samuel and Solhaven and Wendelin and those people working in this, just how moved I am from this session, and also looking at it from a design perspective. That some things that have come up for me here have been like, well, what are our functions? What are we looking to achieve? What are the needs of the visitors? The people that are being referred? What are our boundaries? What we can do and what we can't do? And how we need to design for extremes as well. So what happens when, you know, that worst case scenario comes up? What are the support systems? And it's been really comforting in a way to see that, you know, we're thinking about that because we're designers after all. And patterns to details that this social prescribing is it a problem or is it a symptom of a bigger problem that is going on?
Oh, has anybody?
You know, that's always there, and that address is looking at root. Have I got a poor internet?
You've gone a little bit Dalek, Chris. Frozen Dalek. Has Chris disappeared for everybody else? I can never tell whether it's my internet or anybody else's. Yeah.
You know, root causes as well as. Okay. Sorry. Maybe I can hear myself pretty well, but I can't. I don't know if I'm.
You turn your video off, Chris, where you might have a bit more. You might have a bit more bandwidth.
Is that better?
No, not for me.
Okay.
You sound very much like a Dalek, but we can hear you.
Okay. I can. Okay. So I'll finish there anyway.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, you sound absolutely bonkers, but we got the first part of that, but yeah, that, I mean, that all sounds great, you know, and sort of using the design web to be able to, you know, design both how we work with vulnerable people and also how we care for ourselves as part of the process. I think that was that was what I got from that. Brilliant. Phil's just asked a question. I've been rumbled. The guy from the National Academy of Social Prescribing did send a video. It's 10 minutes long. I thought this discussion was much, much more valuable and interesting. So I will send that. I've created a Green Social Prescribing playlist on our permaculture YouTube channel. So I will send that playlist out in the next newsletter. So his video's in there, but I've also found some really great projects that are just sort of talking about their experiences. There's a really good little video from Natural England that's speaking specifically to people that might be interested in green social prescribing as you know, how you might reach out to people. So I think there's 7 videos that I found that are in there, and they're all pretty short. So I'll send those out in the newsletter, and you can have a look and see what you think. But yeah, I just think there's such rich experience in the group that I would much rather listen to you talk than make you watch a dry video. So yeah. That was my decision, and I think it was the right one. So we've got 2 minutes left, so we've just got time to do a little checkout, and I just want to echo Chris's words about feeling incredibly moved by this session. It's felt very organic and incredibly rich. You know, it's a really big topic. I think it's something where the need is going to massively increase over the coming years. Hopefully the funding and the resourcing increases with it, because it feels like at the moment a lot's being asked of us, but it feels like a scramble to be able to get hold of any money to do good work. And I think it's so important that we're well resourced to do this. So yeah, I'd just like to invite everybody to maybe just share a quick takeaway from this session, you know, something that you're going away with, or an insight that you've had, or something that you'd like to share. So I'm going to pass to you, Hazel, to start, and then if you could pass on to somebody else, that would be great.
I'm got so much food for thought, and it's just been an amazing discussion, and I would be happy to be involved with Gwendolyn's, you know, the part of supervision or peer groups or whatever. Would be really interesting. It's given me a buzz of stuff that I miss doing at the moment. Yeah, but yeah, I just admire you all, what you're doing, very much so. I'll pass you on to Phil.
Thank you, Hazel. Yeah, my big takeaway, yeah, really moved also by particularly Kathy, your story, and yeah, just how important that holding space is, and bless you for that, and that impact that it's had, because it has a toll. It has a bonus being part of delivering this work and supporting people, and it can have an impact. So yeah, just I think the main takeaway is getting the message really clear to the people, budget holders, that they need to support projects to get trained and paid staff to deliver this work. That's it, and I'll pass on to Samuel.
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. My friend Annabelle Padwick is currently representing in the House of Lords regarding horticulture therapy and mental health. And one of the things she keeps saying is we need to have the proper support for people there. And that's you know, what we are working on at Solhaven as part of our land project, is continuing this work as, you know, what is a people care based design. You know, and we're working with local universities to develop, you know, that continuation with the occupational therapists. You know, what are their methods? What can we, you know, use existing models to learn from, to add to our work? And as that grows, obviously, we will share that. It just inspires me more to just continue on this work and know that we're not alone. I don't know who's next. Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Samuel. Well, I got here in a rush, and I'm so pleased that I am here, because I'm feeling I've got all this giggliness kind of going on in my throat, because this is something that I've been, I know that, you know, lots of you have been doing this longer than I have, and, you know, working with your projects, people with mental health, but it's something that I've really been hoping to try and push, and how we can connect permaculture and mental health together. I would love to see it in the mainstream mental health services as well. So for me today, I've just got this buzz in my chest right now to see that this is potentially something that's going to be a bigger project within the Permaculture Association, and it just makes me really happy. And this could be the way forward, where we actually start to support each other and our local communities. You know, should the actual health services collapse in whatever form it might be, because, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. And this is exactly what I've been working towards. I'm doing a diploma project on it. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing so much. Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendelin. Wow. Siobhan, could I invite you in next?
It's a lot to take in, and I think I thought this area would be a bit more forward than it is, and that it would be, I'd have more concrete things to take away. So I think I'm just going to keep watching the space and see how it develops, and not rush into anything too soon, because I think you could bite off too much, really.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Chris, do you want to wrap up and sing a song to see us out?
No, sing a song, no chance. That'll get you running for the bathroom. No, well, just to reiterate my you know, humble admiration for those that are doing it. I mean, I would love to be doing this. Actually, I would love to be thinking of designing this into our site as an extra function, but I totally see the need to, you know, do all the observation and survey and networking and linking and understanding the problem and the issues, the resources, all of that sort of thing. It's really important to have all those together as well, because maybe there's you know, actually a load of other people out there that are also wanting to do that. So you know, to design into land projects, for example, as Wendelin said, you know, I don't see why that should be not possible at all. It's about stacking functions, but doing that from an informed position, not just as Siobhan said, the sake of just wanting to be a do-gooder, which is, you know, not bad in itself, but it can, you know, if we're not prepared and we're not aware and we're not informed, then we can cause more problems than solutions. So that's really, really important. But thank you, everybody. Thanks to the PA and you for bringing us all together, Kath.
It's been, my mind's blown. This has been an absolutely wonderful discussion, and I can't wait for people to watch the video. You know, I'm just really, really grateful for all of you to show up and share all of the things that you know. I think we've got plenty to be chewing over. I've got 6 pages of notes on the back of what we've talked about tonight. So I'll put links and notes and video links into the next newsletter. But, you know, let's keep this discussion live while it feels like there's some energy for it. So perhaps you and I can have a conversation either before or at the Convergence, Wendelin, and take it from there. Brilliant.
Is there a session at the Convergence about it? Festival, sorry, about this.
Wendelin, you're running a session, aren't you? But it's not specifically this.
I'm doing a sort of permaculture, well, it is kind of about this. I'm hoping to interview people on about permaculture, mental health. I've actually put it out there. I've got Chris Warburton-Brown, who's actually said he's happy to talk about mental health, and this is all part of that, expanding on that. So it kind of starts with us, and then how we actually, like it's a zone zero kind of thing, and then how we roll that out and support each other, and literally building on this network. So yeah, this is exactly what all that's about, definitely.
Yeah, I'm doing a session as well.
Brilliant.
So anybody wants to have a chat or do anything, can come and let me video you and whatever, you know, please, you know, reach out. It would be great.
And there might be, you know, when you come and check in, it's like there might be a space where we could actually just have an informal session where we could get together and talk about this more as well. So, you know, I can, if that's something that you'd like, I can look into that too. And perhaps we can squirrel ourselves away in a nice yurt somewhere with a cup of tea and see what emerges. All right, I'm going to let you get to your evenings. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to our illustrious panel for this evening and everybody else that's contributed. And I will look forward to seeing you all next month. Yeah, lots of love and see you at the Convergence, hopefully.
Thanks, Kath. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Love to see you all.
Bye.